Yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. We're going into our next topical study, and we're kind of continuing on in our playlist that we have on our YouTube channel of, I guess we're calling it Bites of Prophetic Delights there. And this week we're going into what we're calling the Little Flock's Angel Food Cake, and we're here in Revelation chapter 2. This is kind of where we're starting out. And the point is, again, like we've been doing in our past couple of studies, is to go through and collect a bunch of dots from the prophetic program here in our Bible and put a bunch of events and people and places together and collect the dots, connect the dots, bring it all together, and kind of see what the Lord's doing in different places. And as we've done this with previous studies, we've done it in Hosea chapter 7, we were in last week. We were in Job chapter 2, just taking a look through the book of Job. We took about 2 weeks to do that previous to that study. And then we were even in, I think it was Psalm chapter 2 the previous week. So we're just collecting different prophetic events. If you need to go back and see some of the studies you missed, if you're just seeing this today for the first time on YouTube, you can see how we're collecting different prophetic events where the Lord will shake the earth and the Lord will set up his kingdom and the Lord will remove the curse of sin and the Antichrist will rise. Of course, this is not in an order, but we are looking at different events and putting them in order so that we can see how the prophetic program is going to end up playing out. So, what we're going to go ahead and do is take a look at the events when we pretty much see when the little flock of Israel gets fed and watered, if you want to call it that, when they flee from the Antichrist and the ages to come. And so we'll take a look at that. We'll see, and we'll start out in Revelation chapter 2, verse 17. And what we see here, it says, He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh, will I give to eat of the hidden manna, and will give him a white stone, and in the stone a new name written, which no man knoweth, saving him that receiveth it. So we're kind of starting out on that verse there. But Revelation 2:17 shows, says, He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. Again, those are the little flock churches of Israel. We'll go into that in just a minute. It says, To him that overcometh, and to him that overcometh are going to be the events of the Great Tribulation with the Antichrist and the future from now. And it says, Will I give to eat of the hidden manna? That's Revelation 2:17. So it's talking about manna, just like there was manna in Exodus 16 that went out to Moses and the 12 tribes of Israel. God will again give that manna again to those who flee the Antichrist. And we'll kind of look at that in just a second. He's going to, and it says it's hidden manna. So it's manna that goes out specifically to those who are hid. And we'll keep looking at that. But if we look real quick at some cross references at Psalm 78, verse 24, to get a definition of what manna is, based on Exodus 16 and the events of that, we're going to see real quick Psalm 78 in verse 24. Just want to read that real quick. And what that says here is kind of the events of Exodus 16. The whole chapter, you can read it. It's got quite a bit to read in there, but this kind of summarizes it in two verses. It says, And had rained down manna upon them to eat, and had given them the corn of heaven. Man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. And so you see they're talking about how essentially manna is the corn of heaven, if you want to call it that. God calls it that. And he says that it's essentially angels' food. Man was eating angels' food in Exodus 16. So we see this, referred to in Psalm 78 based on Exodus 16 and what will take place in Revelation chapter 2, verse 17. So we see the what. Now we're going to look a little bit at the who. And for that, because what we're going to also see is, before we get into it, like we were saying, the verses where the Lord shakes the heavens and sets up his kingdom, we're kind of going backwards a little bit. Now we are setting things up in a sequence of events. We've looked at where the Lord shakes the heavens. We've gone through those studies. We've seen where the Lord sets up the kingdom. We've gone through those studies. We're kind of going backwards a little bit. Now we're seeing where the Antichrist rises. The people have to flee, and they get fed for a little while they're hiding from the Antichrist. and then the Lord will shake the heavens and set up his kingdom. So we'll kind of zoom in on that today. So if we look real quick at the audience to whom the Lord is going to be doing this for, if we look real quick, we'll look at two verses. Is Romans chapter 9, verse 6. Romans 9, verse 6. This is kind of the quick way to summarize. There's actually a whole lot of verses to explain this, but I want to go through just maybe two of them because of time restraints. And what we see in Romans chapter 9, verse 6 says, not as though the word of God hath taken none effect, because the word of God did take effect in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, as the Lord spoke his parables, as the Lord spoke the word of truth to Israel. There were some that understood what was going on, and there were some that had no idea what was going on. And it split them apart into unbelieving Israel that refused to believe in what God was saying, Jesus was saying, Pharisees, Sadducees, and so on. And there were some that were just what we would call commoners. There were, tax people who were doing the taxes and fishermen and so on. And they said, well, I do believe what the Lord is saying. We said that in Romans 9, 6, not as though the word of God had taken on effect, for they are not all Israel, which are of Israel. Even though they were, physically the 12 tribes of Israel, their hearts were not right with God. Some of them were right with God and some of them weren't. So they were kind of at a crossroads, and they all had to decide which side are they going to take. The one that were of Jesus of Nazareth, they're going to believe him, or they're not going to believe him. And so if we look at Luke chapter 12, in verse 32, what the Lord tells them in Luke chapter 12, verse 32, he describes this group that believes in the teachings of what he's saying. And of course, this is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Old Testament books. And he tells them, and he says, fear not, little flock. He's referring to them. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. So he's letting them know that he's referring to them. The body of Christ today is not the little flock of Israel, and the little flock of Israel is not the body of Christ today. So he's saying, fear not, little flock, and it's talking about Israel, those who are right with God. For it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. As far as being right with God, as far as they have the right attitude and believing what he has to say, they want to follow him. They want to do what he has to say. So that's what I mean by that. And so he says this, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. That's what he lets them know. Now, what we'll do now is if we go to Matthew 24, we're going to use this. We'll just go into verse 1. Matthew chapter 24, because what we'll need for this study is we're going to need a timeline from somewhere. What we'll need is the Lord's going to give one here in Matthew chapter 24. He's going to explain as they ask, he says essentially what's it going to look like at the end of, in the ages to come, or and as far as prophecy goes, with Israel goes, with the world goes at the end, what's it all going to look like? How are things going to play out? And so this is what we'll see as we get into Matthew chapter 24. We're going to take this timeline that God gives, which is what the minor prophets were talking about and the major prophets were talking about, and even a little bit from Moses. They were giving these sequence of events. God, the Lord Jesus, takes those sequence of events and says, well, this is the same events that the minor and the major prophets were talking about. It's also what you can cross-refer to in the book of Revelation. And this is what's going to be taking place in the ages to come. So in verse 1, it says, and Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And some of this is also in Psalms and Proverbs and Job and Song of Solomon and so forth. You can refer to a lot of this. It says, and Jesus said unto them, see ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? And Jesus answered and said unto him, take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. But there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. So he's just letting them know there's going to be first there's going to be deception, then there's going to be wars as a result of the deception. It's the Antichrist, the rise of the Antichrist. There's going to be uh, this Antichrist who comes on the scene, creates a bunch of wars. Nation shall rise against nation, and there's going to be famines as a result of all these wars taking places, and then pestilences, diseases as a result of the wars, earthquakes in diverse places, and all these are the beginning of sorrows. And then verse 9, then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted. That's the little flock of Israel, and shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and they shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. Many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, this is the little flock enduring to the end of the great tribulation, all those events, the same shall be saved. They'll be saved by the Lord Jesus Christ at the end of the great tribulation. And this gospel of the kingdom, which is not the gospel that we preach today, the gospel of the grace of God, but the gospel of the kingdom, the fact that the kingdom is going to be set up on earth, we preach about how you can be saved and go to heaven. Two different gospels. Shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. So we're seeing kind of a setup here. We're looking at a timeline of God talking about how the Antichrist is going to rise. He's going to deceive the whole world. He's going to trick the whole world. He's going to gain the whole world's trust. And they're going to say peace and safety, like you read about in Thessalonians. Then there's going to be wars and nations fighting against other nations, and famines and deaths and plagues and earthquakes and everything else you read about in Revelation. And then the little flock, they start to get upset at everything. Some get killed. Some the love of many get cold. False prophets start to rise. They start to get plugged into the camp. Um, they start to deceive many. But as long as they endure, and the gospel of the kingdom is getting thrown out there to the world, so that the same will be saved. That type of thing. So this is just the first 14 verses of Matthew chapter 24. Now we're going to start getting into verse by verse, as long as we can, to see more about how the little flock gets, as our study goes, angels' food cake here, or manna, as we saw from Psalm 78. Where exactly is it that the little flock of Israel get their angels' food? So this is some sequence of events we're looking at to plug into some background to see where we're going here. So verse 15 says, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, that's what they're calling the Antichrist, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whosoever readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. So he's starting to say now when you see a certain thing take place, in the ages to come, and it's the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel. And so I guess for a quick reference, we won't turn to it, but you can see this in Daniel chapter 9, verse 27, and Daniel chapter 12, verse 11, where he's referred to, the Antichrist is referred to as the abomination of desolation. And so we see this in the book of Daniel. That's why he says, spoken of by Daniel the prophet. The Lord quotes Daniel the prophet, or refers to Daniel as he describes all these people, places, and events to cross-reference. But it says he's going to stand in the holy place, and whosoever readeth, let him understand. We see that there. The reason why is he's setting up this economy, worldwide economy. If we look at Revelation chapter 13 and verse 16. Revelation 13, verse 16 is that the Antichrist is declaring himself to be God. He's demanding that the world worship him. And he's declaring essentially, you will bow down to everything I tell you to do. You will worship me. Otherwise, you don't eat. You don't get anything. You won't get any medical supplies or food or water or clothing, or you don't get anything if you don't worship me. So we see in Revelation 13, verse 16, and it says, and he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Now here's wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, For it is the number of a man, and his number is 603 score and 6. So we're seeing here that, unless someone has this mark of the beast, whether they be small or great, rich or poor, free or bond, they're not going to be able to buy anything. They're not going to be able to sell anything. They're not going to be able to mingle or coexist or operate daily in what will be the world system, which the Antichrist will be in complete control of. He'll have all the politics, he'll have all the religion, he'll have all the finance and money and everything. He will be in complete control of everything. As far, I mean, he already essentially is now, but he will physically, literally be on the scene, doing everything. So when we see that there, and we come back to Matthew chapter 24, verse 16, 15 and 16, and he says, when you see him stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. So he's saying, let him flee into the mountains. And so he's saying, those who are unfaithful to the Antichrist, but faithful to the true and living God, this is whom, talking about the little flock of Israel that we saw in Romans 9 and Luke 12, they have to flee and run and hide. The little flock, if you look at Psalm 83, verse 1, now we're going to see something in Psalm 83, verse 1, in reference to this. We can get there real quick. Yeah, well, we'll see here. There's going to be nations that are set on finding those that flee into the wilderness, intentionally hiding from the Antichrist and his system and everything else. It says in Psalm 83, verse 1, keep not thou silence, O God, and hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, mine enemies hath a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. So now we're seeing that the little flock is they're considered to be the hidden ones at this point in time. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance, for they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab and the Hagarenes, Gebal and Ammon and Amalek and the Philistines and the inhabitants of Tyre. Asher is also joined with them. And so you're seeing a list as you read through the rest of Psalm 83. There's a list of a confederacy against Israel. And more so, they're looking for the hidden ones, which, as we see from going back to Matthew chapter 24, verse 16, let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. They're going to become the hidden ones, which receive from Revelation 2:17 hidden men. And there's going to be people looking for them. There's the Antichrist. He'll have a confederacy of nations, working for him. Everyone will be working for him or loyal to him. And they'll be looking for, the little flock of Israel, and or anyone else that's not loyal to him. And so we see there in verse 16, let them which be in the Judea flee into the mountains. And so they'll flee. And so we'll see, that this is something that'll take place. So they become the hidden ones from the nations set on destroying them. Verse 17 of Matthew chapter 24 just continues on. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. And this kind of goes back to Deuteronomy 22, verse 8. See if I can read it real quick so that we don't all have to turn there. But Deuteronomy 22, verse 8, it's based on one of the 613 points of law, where it just talks about the concept of a housetop. It's not where they're going to go there and play on the roof or anything, but Deuteronomy 22, verse 8 says, when thou buildest a new house, and thou shalt make a battlement for thy roof, that thou bring not blood upon thine house, if any man fall from thence. So it's essentially saying, one of the 613 points of law is when a Jew builds a house, they have to have a rail on top so that someone doesn't fall off the housetop when they go on top to do the activities that they do. Again, some cross references we won't turn to is when you see on Matthew 10:27, when it says, what you hear preach from the housetops. And in Acts chapter 10, verse 9, Peter went up on the housetop to pray. So people are praying, people are preaching, people are doing their daily activities from the housetop. And one of the laws of Deuteronomy was to have a rail so that people didn't fall to their deaths and die off the top of the housetop. But he's saying, let him that is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. So we're seeing this, come to play here. Neither, let me see, you take anything out of his house. So they're to, excuse me, intentionally flee. And they're not to take food or clothes or water or money. They're just to just run. As soon as they see that the Antichrist, the abomination of desolation, is declaring himself to be God and that the whole systems of the world have just given themselves over to him completely, and the nations are confederate, against the little flock of Israel or anyone that's loyal, that are not loyal to him, they're just to run and flee into the mountains of the wilderness. And so we'll see more, even more about that. But if we look at Revelation chapter 12, verse 14. Revelation 12, verse 14, we're seeing about the hidden ones now. We're seeing the hidden manna that go to the hidden ones from Psalm 83. Revelation 12 and verse 14. This also, as if we cross-refer the events of Matthew 24 to the events of Revelation, you'll see that they line up perfectly. And this is what we see in, let's see, Revelation 12:14, I believe it is. Yeah. It says, and to the woman were given two wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time from the face of the serpent. If you see also in verse 6 of chapter 12, says, and the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. So there's a place where God is letting all of us know, that where we rightly divide the word of truth, and study and see this. Revelation 12, verse 6, Revelation 12, verse 14, that the little flock the hidden ones are going hide into the wilderness, into her place where she is nourished for a time, for time and times and half a time, 3.5 years from the face of the serpent. And where the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they're going to be fed. And that's from the hidden manna in Revelation chapter 2, verse 17, where the little flock get their angel's food cake, as we're kind of studying today. So we see that there, but first they have to flee, as we're seeing from Matthew chapter 24, verse 16. Then let them which be in the Judea flee into the mountains. They're there going into the wilderness, into the mountain part of the wilderness, which we plug in from such verses as Revelation 12:14, Revelation 12, verse 6, and Matthew 24, verse 16. They're to head into the mountainous part of the wilderness. And so they go there. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Verse 18, neither let him which is in the field return to take back his clothes. So it's just letting you know that there's a point here saying, don't take anything with you. Don't take anything, money or food or clothes or water. Just, you'll be provided for. Just go. And it's in the mountains of the wilderness where God's going to provide everything that they need, that is necessary for his faithful little flock of Israel. So we just saw that in Revelation chapter 12, verse 14, but there's also going to be prayers that they pray as they're in the wilderness, hiding out and getting as we saw, hidden manna. One prayer, if you look at Psalm 23, verse 1, you always hear this at funerals, and I still don't understand why that is. Psalm 23, verse 1, this song's going to make sense now as you look at it from the perspective of the hidden ones that are hiding out from the Antichrist during the Great Tribulation, dependent on the Lord for nourishment, for food, as the nations are confederate against the Lord, trying to find him. So we see here in Psalm 23, verse 1, it says, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, like my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. They will dwell in the house of the Lord forever once they get through all this. But in the meantime, the Lord prepares a table before them, a table of manna, and a lot more than that. We'll look at that as we continue through. But these are the prayers they're praying as they're hiding from the Confederacy of Nations and the Antichrist, who is trying to get them. So we see this here. Let's see. We're looking at this, and in Psalm 27, verse 5. Psalm chapter 27, verse 5, we see even more about this. For in the time of trouble he shall hide me in his pavilion. In the secret of his tabernacle shall he hide me. He shall set me up upon a rock. And now shall mine head be lifted up above mine enemies round about me, for therefore will I offer in his tabernacle sacrifices of joy. That's what they will do. I will sing, yea, I will sing praises unto the Lord. So they're to be of a good spirit, even though they're hiding out, even though the world has fallen apart, they're still to be of a good spirit. They're still to sing praises unto the Lord. They know that they will offer sacrifices of joy. They will, get through this. They will get through what they need to get through. And so we see this, play out here. And so the mountains of the wilderness will serve as their shelter. And if they need to do what they need to do with whatever nature provides for them over there, make a hut out of wood. I'm just making that part up. They'll do what they need to do to make their shelter, but they've got the mountains to provide them for shelter. Now, again, when it comes to providing food, we already saw Revelation chapter 2, verse 17, talking about how manna is going to be freely given to them. Verse 15, when we see more about the hidden manna and the manna provided to them, that's Isaiah chapter 41, verse 15. And we're going to see even more than that. It says in Isaiah 41:15, it says, Behold, I will make thee a new sharp threshing instrument having teeth. Thou shalt thresh the mountains and beat them small, and shalt make the hills as chaff. Thou shalt fan them, and the wind shall carry them away, and the whirlwind shall scatter them. Thou shalt rejoice in the Lord, and shalt glory in the Holy One of Israel. We saw that in Psalm 23. When the poor and needy seek water, and there is none, and their tongue faileth for thirst, I, the Lord, will hear them. I, the God of Israel, will not forsake them. I will open rivers in high places. Well, they're in the mountains. That's pretty high as we can get. And fountains in the midst of the valleys. I will make the wilderness a pool of water, and the dry land springs of water. And I will plant in the wilderness the cedar and the shady tree and the myrtle and the oil tree. So if there's other things they need, the Lord will take care of them, just as we saw back in Exodus 16, back when the Lord's pretty much repeating history with Moses as they went through the wilderness for 40 years and they were provided manna and quail and everything else. It's kind of a repeat performance. God's repeating history again, but with the little flock as they flee in Matthew chapter 24. You're seeing in Isaiah 41, you're seeing he's going to open up rivers, he's going to open up pools of water, he's going to open up, when they seek water and there is none, or when their tongue fails for thirst, the Lord will open up rivers of water for them. So they're not only going to have manna, but they're also going to have rivers of water if necessary. They're going to have everything they need to survive and thrive as they sing joy and praises to God, knowing there's a confederacy of nations that are against them as the Antichrist is taken over the earth with his mark and the beast system. So we see this in Isaiah 41. If we look at Psalm 105, verse 40, Psalm 105, verse 40. Let's see if this is the right one. Yep. And this goes back to Exodus 16. And you're also seeing the example, just as he did this in Exodus 16, you'll see this is going to be what he does concerning the water. It says, the people asked, and he brought quails. This was Exodus 16, and satisfied them with the bread of heaven. Again, the bread waters gushed out. That was Exodus 16. This is the same concept of what will happen again in Isaiah 41 with the little flock, Revelation 2:17, and what will happen when they flee in Matthew 24. They ran into the dry places like a river. He For he remembered his holy promise and Abraham his servant. They're still looking to be obedient to the Genesis 12, 1 through 3 covenant. So it kind of goes forth, and he brought forth his people with joy and his chosen with gladness. So this is kind of what we're seeing here in Psalm 105, I think it is. Yeah, 105, verse 40. Then if we look at Isaiah chapter 65, verse 11. Isaiah 65, verse 11. I got that right. And so you see sort of a contrast of what the Lord's declaring to his enemies almost at this point in time. He says, "But ye are they that forsake the Lord, that forget my holy mountain, that prepare a table for that troop, that troop, and that furnish the drink offering unto that number. Therefore will I number you to the sword, and ye all shall bow down to the slaughter, because when I called, ye did not answer. When I spake, ye did not hear, but did evil before mine eyes, and chose that wherein I delighted not. Therefore, thus saith the Lord God, behold, my servants shall eat, but ye shall be hungry." It's like it's almost he's speaking to unbelieving Israel in contrast to the little flock of Israel, which has run and hid and are safely eating, safely drinking, safely, sheltered and safely, hiding from the Antichrist. It says, "Therefore, thus saith the Lord God, behold, my servants shall eat, but ye shall be hungry. Behold, my servants shall drink, but ye shall be thirsty. Behold, my servants shall rejoice, but ye shall be ashamed. Behold, my servants shall sing for joy of heart, but ye shall cry for sorrow of heart, and shall howl for vexation of spirit. And ye shall leave your name for a curse unto my chosen. For the Lord God shall slay thee, and call his servants by another name." And it kind of goes on from there. You're seeing a contrast between believing Israel and unbelieving Israel during that time. What's happening? The fact that there's going to be the chosen and the servants and the blessed from Matthew 5. Blessed are they that have this happening to them, and pure of heart, and those that are suffering for righteousness' sake. And that's all Matthew 5. Those are the little flock of Israel that are in hiding. You're seeing that this is what you're reading about also in Isaiah 65, but being they're getting provision. They're getting their food provided for. They're getting that manna. They're getting that hidden manna. What we're looking at today, Revelation chapter 2, verse 17. Also, as we saw, they're also provided water. We saw that in Isaiah 41, verse 15, and Psalm 105, verse 40, and so on. But also, when it comes to clothing, let's say some of their clothing we saw from Exodus when there was Israel and 40, their clothes just never wore out. But in case there was a system that was needed, if we look even at Acts chapter 1, verse 14, there's already a system being provided for them as the as this uh, great tribulation gets started up in the book of Acts. And that's Acts chapter 1, verse 14. Talking about the believers, the little flock believers, the Jewish believers in the law and the 613 commandments and the covenants. It says here, which is not the body of Christ. It says, "These all continued with one accord in prayer and supplication with the women, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, and with his brethren." But they've got everything in one accord. So they've got all their possessions in one accord. And the way we know that is by looking at it in Acts chapter 2, verse 1. It says, "And when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all with one accord in one place." And they're all again in one, they've got everything in one place and all in one accord. Acts 2:44, as we go there. And as you read through Acts chapter 2, you don't see anything about today's church, the body of Christ, members of his body. You see it all saying Israel, Israel was this, Israel, Israel, everything says Israel in it. When we get to Acts chapter 2, verse 44, it says, "And all that believed," again, still talking about Israel and the little flock of Israel, "and all that believed worked together and had all things common, and sold their possessions and goods, and parted them to all men as every man had need." So as this system continues, as they flee into the mountains, they're told to take nothing with them, but whatever they do have when they get there, whatever it is, they can part their possessions and goods, part them as every man has needs. For whatever reason, if they have need of something and somebody's got X, too much of or X amount of this, and they need whatever it is, whether they find it in the wilderness, whether they have whatever they have, or find whatever they find, they can share it amongst each other. This is what they're told to do. This is how they're taught to survive. They sold their possessions and goods and parted them to all men, as every man had need. And they, continuing daily with one accord, they do everything with one accord. As they flee into the wilderness, their mindset is to do everything with one accord. In the temple, breaking bread from house to house, and did eat their meat with gladness and singleness of heart. Now, of course, we know in Acts chapter 2, they won't do this forever. They'll do this until you get to the part on the timeline we're seeing in Matthew 24, when the Antichrist rises up and they have to flee into the wilderness. Where we're seeing now, God's providing food, God's providing water, the clothing and everything else is there to be provided for. And the reason why we know that, if we look at Luke chapter 12:32 again, is that the Lord Jesus Christ instructed them to do this. That's why Acts 2:44 takes place. Luke chapter 12, verse 32 again. You're seeing the audience to whom he's talking to. We're still talking about Israel. We're still talking about Jews. We're still talking about the people of the 12 tribes of Israel. It says, fear not, little flock, not the body of Christ. For it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell that ye have, and give alms. Provide yourselves bags which wax not old, a treasure in the heavens that faileth not, where no thief approacheth, neither moth corrupteth. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Let your loins be girded about, and your lights burning. And ye yourselves, like unto men that wait for their Lord, they'll do that in the wilderness, all right, when he will return from the wedding, that when he cometh and knocketh, they may open unto him immediately. Blessed are those servants whom the Lord, uh, when he cometh, shall find watching. And he kind of goes on and explains more from there. But this is what you're seeing. He's saying, sell all that ye have. I think it's in verse 33. Sell that ye have and give alms. Now, a lot of people read that if they think that they're the audience in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and say, well, the Lord didn't literally mean this, or the Lord spiritually meant this, or I have already spiritually sold everything. Everything that I own belongs to the Lord. He can take it anytime he wants, but it's mine right now. They make up excuses for the verses. The verse says, sell that ye have. Take everything and sell it. And the reason why is what we're looking at today, is that in Acts 2:44, they're all of one accord. When they have to run into the wilderness, they go. And if you read Acts chapter 5, we don't have time to do that now. Ananias and Sapphira, they don't sell everything that they have. They keep some money for themselves. They blaspheme the Holy Ghost, and the Holy Ghost kills them because they don't do what they're supposed to be doing. If they keep some money, they'd be able to buy and sell. Then they'd plug into the mark of the beast economy and be a part of the lie program. So that's why you're seeing everything that you're seeing. But we don't have time to go deep down that road. Uh, we're seeing pretty much that it's the mountains of the wilderness where God's going to provide for the little flock of Israel. And so far, we're seeing he provides that angels' food, what we're looking at today. He provides water. There's a system where clothing and other items as needed can be spread around for everybody. And if they need to pray for anything else, we go to Matthew chapter 21, verse 22. Matthew chapter 21, verse 22, that's a verse people like to take today, and they like to spin it any way they see fit, creating God as their own personal genie. But Matthew chapter 21, verse 22, it's actually based on Matthew 21:21. We're talking about, verily I say unto you, if ye have faith and doubt not, ye shall not only do this which is done to the fig tree, but also ye shall say unto this mountain, oh, wow, they're in the mountains. So they're flee and they hid, and they're the hidden ones in the mountains, hiding from the Confederacy and the Antichrist. Be thou removed, and thou shalt, or be thou cast into the sea, and it shall be done. And all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive. Now, when they're in this situation, and they're hiding and they're praying and they're looking for food, water, clothing, and maybe anything else in regards to their survival from the Confederacy and the Antichrist and everything else, this is where it's going to come in. And all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer. They're not going to pray for money. They're not going to pray for a big cell phone or a mansion. They're not going to be praying for these things when they're hiding. That's going to give them away. They're not going to be praying for something that's going to broadcast their location to the Antichrist. They're going to be praying for whatever it may be, whatever it is, a healing or something that, or just whatever it is that's going to relate to their situation, not anything we have going on as this video is being recorded in 2023. It's going to relate to the situation that the little flock of Israel has concerning the fact that they're hidden. And if they need anything beyond food, water, clothing, and anything they can have parceled out amongst the group, they'll pray for it. And, believing they shall receive. But it's going to be related to that situation. If you look at John chapter 11, verse 22, I believe he says more of the same thing to them. John chapter 11, verse 22. And myself, and he says here, but I know that even now, whatsoever thou wilt ask of God, God will give it to thee, in relation to what he's saying to Israel and the little flock concerning what's going on there. And if we look at John chapter 14, verse 13, I believe he says the same thing again to them, just in the book of John. And whatsoever ye shall ask in my name, that will I do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. This is in relation to them being in this situation where they're in the wilderness, in the mountains, and they're going forth with the food and the water and so forth. And then John 15, verse 16. See if I got that verse right. Yeah, the latter part of that verse is that whatsoever ye shall ask of the Father in my name, he may give it to you. That's the latter part of that verse. And then 16:23, John 16:23. And in that day ye shall ask me nothing, but verily, verily, I say unto you, whatsoever ye shall ask the Father in my name, he will give it to you. So all the people that say today, well, I've seen in the Bible 4 times, especially Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, that I can ask anything of the Father, anything of God, anything in Jesus' name, and he'll give it to me. Again, it relates to this situation you're reading about in Matthew chapter 24. And this is why it's there. This is what it relates to. So going back to Matthew chapter 24, watching for time and watching for everything. We're plugging in why things are the way things are. We're kind of going through our timeline. And we're seeing, we'll go back to Matthew 24, verse 17. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field, verse 18, return to take his clothes. And then he says that woe unto him that are with child, and to them which give suck in those days. So it's talking about that course they have to take, that flight they have to run, that the fact that they have to run and flee into the mountains of the wilderness during such a terrible time as this, where the Antichrist declares himself to be God and takes everything, everything is given to him. So we see that there. But if we look at Matthew chapter 6, or Matthew 24, just go to Matthew 6. This is also why the Lord instructs him in Matthew 5 and Matthew 6 and Matthew 7 to do these things. We'll see here Matthew chapter 6, verse 25. He says, therefore I say unto you, again, the little flock of Israel, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat, or what ye shall drink, nor yet for your body. Those are the things we just went over, those 3 things. Uh, what ye shall put on. Is not the life more than meat, and the body more than raiment? Behold the fowls of the air. They sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns. Yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are ye not much better than they? Which of you by taking thought can add 1 cubit unto his stature? And why take ye thoughts for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow, how they toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Wherefore, if God so clotheth the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe you, O ye of little faith? Therefore take no thought, asking, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or wherewithal shall we be clothed? For after all these things do the Gentiles seek. Yeah, they seek it after by plugging themselves into the mark of the beast economy, which will be going on during that time. For your heavenly Father knoweth that ye have need of all these things, and yet they have need of these things because they're fleeing from the Confederacy in Psalm 83 and from the Antichrist. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Take therefore no thought for tomorrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. And so they'll pray things, if you stay in Matthew for a moment, still in Matthew 6, they pray things like we saw in Psalm 23, where they pray that a table be set up before their enemies. If you look also in Matthew chapter 6, in verse 11, this is another prayer they pray as they go into the wilderness. This is another thing they say as they go into the wilderness. Give us this day our daily bread. There's going to be bread they'll need on a day by day basis, hidden manna, Revelation chapter 2, verse 17. And they're going to pray things like this. They're going to be praying, Lord, your kingdom comes. Your will's going to be done on earth just like it is in heaven. We know this to be a fact. Give us this day, right now, as we're hiding in the wilderness from the Psalm 83 confederacy, essentially, in the Antichrist. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. You lead us not into temptation. You prepare a table for us in the wilderness. We are singing songs of joy to you from Psalm 23, Psalm 27, and so on. But deliver us from evil. Deliver us from evil because there's so much evil around us. There's an antichrist with a mark of the beast system and a confederacy and so forth. And so on. So we're seeing how all these verses plug themselves in together. And this is kind of why we're doing this study, is we're trying to take people, places, and events and just cross-refer them all together so that we get the big picture. So we're seeing this plug in. Come back to Matthew chapter 24. Verse 19, woe unto them that give are with child, and to them which give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, nor neither on the Sabbath day. And so we see also, just as a quick reference, when we saw that the Lord told them not to worry about being provided for with clothes and food and water, Paul tells us, the body of Christ, the exact opposite. Again, some verses I'm just going to throw out for time's sake. When you read 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 8, and 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 10, it's up to us to provide for ourselves today. We're not in their situation, and they're not in our situation. Today, when we need provision, when we need money, when we need food, and when we need water, and we need clothing, we need to go get a job in order to do that. We're not going to sit here and wait for God to give us, to just throw money from heaven, or manna from heaven, or water from heaven down to the earth, and we'll just sit back and wait to get it. We need to proactively think about what it is we want to do and then go ahead and do it on purpose. And that's what Paul tells us in First Timothy chapter 5, verse 8, 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 10. So that's our instructions today, versus as we rightly divide the word of truth and allow all of God's truth to be God's truth, Matthew 24, and so on, Matthew 6, and Psalm 83, Psalm 23, and so on. So going back into verse 20, but pray ye that your flight, Matthew 24, 20, pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, nor ever shall be. So they start talking about how it's great tribulation. Jeremiah 30, verse 7 calls it the time of Jacob's trouble. That's a good cross reference where he refers to it as that. So that's what we see here. And we see, and it says in verse 22, and except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Again, the elect is the little flock of Israel. It's nobody in there talking about us today. And the only people that are elect is because they're elect in prophecy, being in Christ before Paul. If you see that in Romans 16:7, that's what we're talking about here. They're in Christ according to prophecy. John 15 talks about it, verse 1 through 7. And Romans 16, verse 7 talks about those who are in prophecy, those who are in Christ according to prophecy. But it says, except those days be shortened. They're shortened because you see God starting up the events of the Great Tribulation in Acts chapter 1 to Acts chapter 8. Things get started up. The Great Tribulation gets set into motion. Everything gets going. The Holy Spirit is poured out in Acts chapter 2 to Israel. Things start moving along. And then in Acts chapter 9, it's completely interrupted, and the dispensation of grace is started up, which is where we are at right now today. But the 7-year time period is actually shortened. because a couple of months have gone by already in Acts chapter 1 through Acts chapter 8. So that when it starts up again, it's actually going to be 6 years and some change rather than a full 7 years. So it says, and except those days should be shortened, it's almost like a hint where they really don't know that there's going to be an interruption. There should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. So then, as he goes through and he explains this in verse 23, then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. So, of course, here comes the next part where we're going to plug in a bunch of different collect the dots and connect the dots type of thing. It says, uh, if any man shall say unto you, little flock, essentially, lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. Because now what's going to happen as this confederacy of nations are looking to kill him or destroy him, there's also going to be the group of people that are faithful to the Antichrist. And they're going to try to blend in with the little flock wherever they find them, if they can find them, where they can find them. And they're going to try to act like them. They're going to try to look like the little flock, talk like the little flock, and try to. There's going to be the wise little flock that are always faithful to what God says. The Antichrist knows that they are going to have to try to act like the little flock if they want to try to steal them away from Christ. So there's going to be the foolish people. And so we're getting into the wise servants and the foolish servants now. They're all going to act like they're going to be wolves in sheep's clothing. Again, that's Matthew 7, where they're going to come along and try to pull them away and trick them and deceive them. And so we're seeing this here in, if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. Verse 24 says, For there shall arise, here's our next thing on the timeline, there shall arise false Christs and false prophets and show great signs and wonders, and so much that if there were possible, or if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. So we look at the book of Jude, and there's only one chapter, verse 10. Jude, verse 10. Jude describes these imposters who work their way into, if they do find the little flock camps in the mountains of the wilderness, they're going to try to act like them, talk like them, look like them, and say things like them. But ultimately, they're going to fall short because they just can't do it. Here's what they'll do. It says, But these speak evil of those which they know not. But what they know naturally, as brute beasts, in those things they corrupt themselves. Woe unto them! For they have gone the way of Cain, and ran greedily after the heir of Balaam for reward, and perished in the gainsaying of Korah. These are spots in your feast of charity when they feast with you. So they're going to feast with them as they try to plug themselves in. And we'll get into that in a parable in just a minute. They're going to feast with them, feeding themselves without fear, clouds they are without water, carried about of winds, trees whose fruit withereth without fruit, twice dead, plucked up by the roots. And so the Antichrist will send his followers to chase after the little flock, to blend in with them, to act like them and talk like them and deceive them and trick them. If you look at, again, we'll go to Matthew chapter 7, verse 15. We just saw a little bit of it in the book of Jude, how they're going to sit there and feast with them, and yet they're going to be saying all sorts of blasphemous things, which is going to expose them. And then we saw in Matthew 24, that's going to be the time when there's going to be false prophets rising in the camps there because they found them. They can hide for a short time, be fed in the wilderness, but eventually there's going to be a mix that blend in. And so we see here in chapter 7, verse 15, beware of false prophets which come to you. So they're going to come to them. They're going to find them in the mountains eventually, in sheep's clothing. They're going to look like them. It says, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. Ye shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. So he's talking about the true, wise servants, the little flock of Israel, and those who are false and corrupt and acting like, trying to act like the little flock, but they're just the Antichrist servants. Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Yeah, they'll be cast into the fire. Wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them. Not every one that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven. Now they're going to be saying, Lord, Lord, but they're just not of the true little flock of Israel. But he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? And in thy name have we cast out devils? And in thy name done many wonderful works? And then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. And then it kind of goes on from there. But you're kind of seeing what the Lord's going to say to these people who try to blend themselves into the little flock and act like the little flock, but they're not the little flock. And so, even when the little flock is eating hidden manna, being given water, clothing, and shelter, and food, and everything else, and they get discovered, there's still going to be those from the Antichrist camp that somehow find them and try to blend in with them and try to steal them away from the Lord. And so, these types of things will take place. The book of First John, the entire book, has 7 tests that the little flock can use to find out. That's what the whole purpose of the book is. We don't have time to read it, of course, but the whole purpose of the book is to find out with 7 tests, are you, meaning them, a true member of the little flock of Israel, or are you a false agent of the Antichrist? And so it's about false love and false profession of Christ and so on and so forth. So they may come in and say, well, Jesus isn't really God. He didn't really rise from the dead. Well, the 7 tests in the book of First John say, well, if they do this, they're not of God. And if they say they've never sinned, they're not of God. And if they did this, they're not of God. Warning, red flag. This person is not a true member of the little flock of Israel. So that's the book of First John. If we look at Matthew chapter 13, verse 24, again, staying in the book of Matthew and using one of the parables. Matthew chapter 13, verse 24. The Lord warns them ahead of time. This is what's coming up for you, little flock. Get ready for this. As you run and flee and hide, this is what's coming your way. Another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field, but while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat, and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, didst thou not sow good seed in thy field? From whence when then hath it tares? And said unto him, an enemy hath done this. The servants said unto him, Wilt thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest while we gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. And in the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, Gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles, and burn them, or to burn them. But gather the wheat into my barn. So he's saying essentially, let them both grow up together. The true little flock knows how to test them, knows how to find them, knows how to search them out, but let them both grow up together. And then eventually, what we did a study in the book of Joel, where the reapers, which are the angels, they come and they destroy the whole place. They know how to harvest the bad guys, if we'll say it real quick, and keep the little flock there. So that's from one parable. If we look at Matthew chapter 25 in verse 1, we were talking about the wise little flock and the foolish agents of the Antichrist that try to blend in, and they're just going to be kept there growing up together until it's time for the eventual harvest. We see here it says, Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. And 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish. Then they that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them. But the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said unto the wise, Give us of your oil, for our lamps are gone out. But the wise answered, saying, Not so, lest there be not enough for us and for you, but go ye rather to them that sell and buy for yourselves. And while they went out to buy, the bridegroom came, and it kind of goes on from there. But it's, again, as we've gone through this before, it's in verse 9. He says, But the wise answered, saying, Not so, lest there be not enough for us and you. But go ye rather to them that sell and buy for yourselves. The little flock, through using those 7 tests in the book of First John, have realized that these are the Antichrist's agents or whatever they are, and that they have the mark of the beast and that they can buy and sell. Everyone who flees from the mountains in Matthew chapter 24, as we know, they are not to take anything with them. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return to take any of his clothes. So they're not to have a thing on. They're not to get plugged into this mark of the beast economy. But when you get to Matthew 25, there's people that are growing up together, as Matthew 13 talks about. They're side by side. You've got people infiltrating the camps. And so he's saying here in verse 9 of Matthew 25, go to those people where you can buy and sell some oil and come back and you can all meet up with us later, because they know that there should be nobody in these camps that are able to buy and sell. And so they should all be dependent on manna, angel's food cake here, as we're studying today from Revelation 2:17. They should be dependent only on God for food, for water, for clothing, for shelter. And they should not be dependent whatsoever on anything. But yet he tells they tell them, go get some oil over there from those that buy and sell. And that way you're going to be able to press on and come back and join us. But it was really just to get rid of them. And so these parables are showing that there is going to be a mix of the two and how they're going to deal with them wisely. And so we see that there, but kind of going back to where we are, and verse 23 of Matthew 24, he says, then, just to keep going through it, then if any man shall say unto you, lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise false Christ and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they should deceive the very elect. There's going to be a lot of devilish, if we can call it that, satanic powers going around during this time, that even those who are serving the devil will be able to display false signs, false wonders, and false miracles. And just to read it real quick, it's going to be in Revelation chapter 16 in verse 13. I'll just get there myself and read it off for you. That's Revelation 16 verse 13. It says, and I saw three unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon and out of the mouth of the beast and out of the mouth of the false prophet, for they are the spirits of devils, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. So we're seeing that they're going to be able indeed perform these false great signs and wonders, so much that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. That's a thing that can happen in the ages to come. And that's Matthew 24, verse 24. Verse 25 says, behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers, believe it not. So they may want the little flock to come down from the mountains of the wilderness to the desert, and maybe it's just an easier, more strategic point to wipe them out or destroy them. And so we see that in verse 26. Behold, he's in the desert. It might be easier to kill him there. Or he is in the secret chambers. You can see in such verses as 1 Kings 22:25 that the king always had secret chambers he could hide in. And so they may say the same thing. The agents of the Antichrist, as we call it that, would maybe say the Lord is in the secret chambers. Why don't you come over here? And it might be another way to take out some people of the little flock camps. But we see that there. But it says, for as the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. And pretty much what he's saying is it's not going to be as limited as his first arrival in the beginning of the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, where just a few people saw him, and his ministry was limited to 12. And it's just only a few people get to see him or get to hear from him, type of thing. He's saying, for as the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even to the west. He's saying it's good. This is going to be his coming. It's going to be from one end to the other. Everyone's going to see this. This is going to be a big deal. This is going to be broadcast. His coming is going to be broadcasted to everybody. So shall the coming of the Son of Man be. That's verse 27. Verse 28 says, for wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. And again, it's talking about how if you've got a fallen body or a dead body out there in the wilderness out there, and you've got as it says there, eagles gathered together. It's it's widely known, it's widely seen, it's widely broadcasted. It's something that's not hidden when you've got eagles flying around a body type of thing, flying around a carcass. You can't take it and hide it. It's something that's obvious. So he's saying, when I show up in Revelation 19:11 and Isaiah 63 and I destroy all my enemies, that's something that's going to be known worldwide. Everything, my coming is going to be a worldwide clear understanding, clear as day. This is something that's going to be taking place. So wherefore, if they say unto you, behold, he's in the desert, don't go out there. Or if these agents that these tares that are blended in with the wheat, if they say, go into the secret chambers, that's where he is. My coming is going to be from east to west. Don't listen to them if they say the Lord's. They're trying to pull you out and kill you, trying to get you, they're trying to trick you. And don't fall for it. So that's what we see there in verse 28 and 27 and 28. And then verse 29 says, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. Now, this is where we're kind of moving along the timeline to studies that we've done before. We did this in our Haggai chapter 2, verse 6 study, where we talked about a shake and stake and you'll see this on our playlist if this is the first time you're hearing this and you don't know what I'm referring to. This is where the heavens will be shaken from Haggai chapter 2, verse 6. And if we look even now, if we look at Hebrews, let's see, chapter 12, verse 22. Hebrews 12:22. Let me see if I got this. It says that but ye are come unto Mount Zion, and unto the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to an innumerable company of angels, to the general assembly and church of the firstborn, which are written in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of just men made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant, and to the blood of sprinkling that speaketh to better things than that of Abel. And it's kind of talking about the heavenly Jerusalem that's going to be coming down. But he's going to shake the earth first. This is something that'll take place. If you look at, as we kind of see further, Joel chapter 3, verse 16. And again, this is directly from our previous studies. Now we're plugging this study in with other studies we've done before. Joel chapter 3 and verse 16. And we see here talking about when the Lord shakes the earth as a result of what takes place after all these events have taken place chronologically from Matthew 24. It says, the Lord also shall roar out of Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth shall shake. But the Lord will be the hope of his people and the strength of the children of Israel. Because we're seeing by this time, Israel's hidden. They're waiting. They're waiting on hope for the Lord. They're praying prayers like Matthew 6 and Psalm 23. The Lord roars out of Zion. The Lord roars out, destroys his enemies from Isaiah 63, shakes the earth. We see there Joel chapter 3. We see this also in Revelation 6. He'll reorganize the government of the heavens as far as shaking out the wicked. If we have to look at Isaiah chapter 24, real quick, Isaiah 24, verse 19, as we continue to connect the dots from previous studies that we've done. That was Isaiah 24, verse 19. And we did this study before. We're just reconnecting the verses with this. The 24, verse 19, and that was, the earth is utterly broken down, the earth is clean dissolved, the earth is moved exceedingly. The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard, and shall be removed like a cottage, and the transgression thereof shall be heavy upon it, and it shall fall and not rise again. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall punish the host of the high ones that are on high, and the kings of the earth upon the earth. And they shall be gathered together as prisoners are gathered in the pit, and shall be shut up in the prison, and after many days shall they be visited. And then the moon shall be confounded, and the sun ashamed, when the Lord of hosts shall reign in Mount Zion and Jerusalem, and before his ancients gloriously. So we're seeing more about that through these verses here. And then while we're in Isaiah chapter 34, verse 1. Isaiah 34, verse 1. We see here it says, come near, ye nations, to hear, and hearken, ye people. Let the earth hear, and all that is therein, the world, and all things that come forth of it. For the indignation of the Lord is upon all nations, and his fury upon all their enemies. He hath utterly destroyed them, he hath delivered them to the slaughter. Their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses, and the mountains shall be melted with their blood. Now, there's those mountains still from where we were all the way at the beginning of the study. Now, the mountains are covered in the blood of their enemies, and all the hosts of heaven shall be dissolved. There's the shaking of the heavens, the falling. We see in Revelation, I believe it's 16, where they fall from heaven. There's war in heaven, and they fall. And the hosts of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled together as a scroll, and all their hosts shall fall down, as the leaf falleth off from the vine, as a falling fig from the fig tree. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down on Idumea and upon the people of my curse to judgment. The sword of the Lord is filled with blood. It's made fat with fatness and with the blood of lambs and goats. And it just goes on more talking about the carnage that will justly take place as the Lord vanquishes his enemies. So we see that there, but it goes on. And then it goes on as we go to back to Matthew chapter 24. We'll start wrapping it up here. But Matthew chapter 24, verse 29. Again, it says, immediately after the tribulation of those days, after everything we've read, shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light. We just saw a little bit about that in Isaiah. And the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And then we'll wrap it up in verse 31, saying, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. And then that's kind of, you're seeing he gives this series of events. But it says in verse 30, then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn when they shall see the Son of Man coming. And you see this in Zechariah chapter 12, verse 10. I'll just give out the cross references. You see this take place in that chapter. And you also see it in Revelation chapter 1, verse 7. It's also briefly mentioned there. But those are some two good cross references where you see this in Matthew chapter 24, verse 30. And it says, and he shall send in Matthew chapter 24, verse 31. It says, he shall send his angels with the sound of a great trumpet. If you look at Matthew 25, just one chapter over, verse 31, it says, when the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, then he shall sit upon the throne of his glory. They're saying these great angels are going to come with him, a massive amount. Joel chapter 2, I'm just looking at the time. We may have time to go there real quick and wrap up. Joel chapter 2, verse 1 gives a little description of that, of when they come and they just destroy everything there. Joel chapter 2, get there. Verse 1, and again, this is from another study where we went through and we saw, I think we were studying Joel chapter 2, verse 28, how it has nothing to do with us today. But this also describes the arrival of all these holy and elect angels, that when they come with a great sound of a trumpet and so forth. Of course, Joel chapter 2, verse 1, there's our first verse. Blow ye the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand. A day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and strong. There hath not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Yea, and nothing shall escape them. The appearance of them is as the appearance of horses, and as horsemen so shall they run. Like the noise of chariots on the tops of mountains shall they leap. Like the noise of of a flame on the fire that devoureth the stubble, as the strong people set in battle array. Before their face the people shall be much pained. All faces shall gather blackness. They shall run like mighty men. They shall climb the wall like men of war. You're hearing about these angels. And they shall march every one on his ways, and they shall not break their ranks. Neither shall one thrust another. They shall walk every one in his path, and when they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded. They shall run to and fro in the city, and they shall run upon the wall, and they shall climb up upon the houses. They shall enter in at the windows like a thief. The earth shall quake before them, the heavens shall tremble, the sun and moon shall be dark, and the stars shall withdraw their shining, and the Lord shall utter his voice before his army, for his camp is very near, for he is strong that executeth his word. For the day of the Lord is great and very terrible, and who can abide it? That's a description there of those angels you're seeing from Matthew chapter 24 in where did it go? Verse 30. I'm sorry, verse 29. When it's talking about, see, I might have missed it. I'm sorry, verse 31. And he shall send his angels with the sound of a great trumpet, with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to another. And again, you see a little bit about that in Matthew 13, the continuation of the parable. I guess we're still in Matthew 13, verse 36, talking about the gathering. Matthew 13, verse 36, and we'll start to wrap up right here. It says, when it talks about gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. This is Matthew 13, 36. Then Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house. Yeah, I got the wrong. Declare to us the parable of the tares of the field. He answered and said unto them, He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man, the field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares of the children are the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. That's what we're seeing in Matthew 24, verse 30 and 31. Therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, those are the agents of the Antichrist there, so shall it be at the end of this world. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. That's the little flock of Israel. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. So we see all this going forth all through. We wanted to use the timeline of Matthew chapter 24 to plug together all these different incidences, to collect the dots, connect the dots, and to bring a lot together. But we see the little flocks running into the wilderness, they're hidden ones, from everything that's going on, where they're able to eat manna, drink water, clothing provided, or having a system of needs provided. They can pray for anything they want on top of that, and as long as it makes sense, which it will, because that's all they're going to be praying for in their situation, they'll receive it. The mountains themselves are the shelter, and yet the Antichrist may plug in his own agents, and God will still set up doctrine for them to test these people with. If they have a funny feeling that these are really not people of the little flock of Israel, they can test them and try them and see if they're wise, foolish servants, or wise or foolish servants, I should say. So there's a lot there, but I wanted to go through that and kind of collect a lot of dots, connect a lot of dots, show that the word of truth and prophecy is a very interesting, detailed, planned book that the Lord has set up, not even for us, but for a different audience. And we can rightly divide the word of truth, gain a lot of wisdom and understanding from the word of truth, and continue to plug in the word of truth with all these different spiritual lessons, understandings, and groups and places. And with that, we'll stop here and see if there's any kind of thoughts or questions or comments on everything we just kind of went through.
A lot of information.
Yeah. Yeah, it was meant to kind of plug in something because we're getting so much good information that it's good to just take it, plug it all together, and distribute the information so that we're seeing what God's plan is. And we can see, we can look at any dispensational map, I guess, or chart and see what God's plans are for the ages. And it should click when we see it, but to kind of go through it over and over again, maybe with different events, different people, different collectings of the dots and connectings of the dots, really helps to see what God's plans and purposes are. So,
Obviously, the thing here is if you don't rightly divide the word of truth, if you've never divided the word of truth, if you don't understand what the word of truth means, then if you're going to a typical church in the typical town on a Sunday or whatever, you're not getting the true story here.
yeah,
You're not getting, I mean, you're thinking you're Israel, you're thinking that's what you have to look forward to, and it's just not the case.
yeah,
Well, I find it ironic that, a lot of denominations do want you to think that you're, well, you're Israel. But I don't recall my denomination really going into the Revelation because that would scare you.
Does
That would
the
scare you half to death.
Catholic Church even have the book of Revelation?
I'm sure they got it in a Catholic
Bible.
Bible or something. I mean, I wouldn't even call it a Bible, but I'm
Yeah.
sure they've got. I mean, you can go there and read it.
Yeah, but they never went into that because if they did, and they're trying to make you think that's you, and scare the heck out of you.
Yeah, well, I mean, Babylon is mentioned in there, and they are essentially Babylon for all intents and purposes. So, I mean,
Well, we, yeah,
yeah. I mean, I'm sure when Antichrist comes along, he's just going to say, "Come on in. You're one of the gang."
oh yeah,
You know,
yeah.
he's not going to kick him out. He's going to say, "All you millions and billions of followers, you can just,
It didn't get taken out of here.
yeah, you're welcome in my
You're
gang."
not members
Yeah.
of the church.
Yeah, same with, but he's also going to say to the, I mean, even right now, I believe that the Catholics are trying to shake hands with the Muslims and say, hey, we're all one big happy family. Sorry for the Crusades, and if you apologize for this, we'll apologize for that. And we can just be one big happy religious family, and eventually, all the other religions will jump on board. The Antichrist will show up and say, we're all one big happy family here.
And then the angels
sure
show
that's
up
how
and
he'll-
destroy them.
Yeah, I'm sure that's how he'll start.
Not a big happy family after.
Yeah, and then they'll say, just help us destroy the little flock. Yeah. Of course, they won't call them the little flock. They'll probably call them rebels or
Traitors. Yeah.
traitors
Yeah.
or something like that.
Mhm.
So, but yeah,
Cult.
yeah, a cult or something, something like that.
That's-
So, yeah. So with that, we'll stop here, and yeah, we'll have another study ready for Wednesday, and yeah, we'll wrap it up here for today. All right. Well,